Everyone, and welcome. We're so glad to have you with us. I know you've all had a very busy day, and it takes commitment to join one of these webinars, so we really appreciate the fact that you have joined us. Let me share a little bit of background about myself. I am the Director of Talent Management and Culture for Sequent. Sequent is based in Columbus, Ohio. We've been around now for about 22 years, and we are an HR consulting and outsourcing company. I have been with Sequent almost 6 years now, practicing in leadership development, employee engagement, organizational development, and executive coaching. So we're going to talk a little bit this evening about getting that next generation of leaders up and running and ready to go. And I've put this presentation together with 3 specific audiences in mind. So if you are a millennial who aspires to prepare for a leadership role, I think you'll find some good tips and techniques for you to consider. And if you are a millennial who has just recently taken on a leadership role in your organization and have just inherited some direct reports, but haven't really yet had the benefit of leadership development, you too will probably come away with some good tips and techniques to enhance your career development as well. And if some of you listeners are folks who are responsible for hiring, engaging, and developing leaders, you too will have some very valuable information to glean. And as Amanda said earlier on, as we work through this presentation, please feel free to ask any questions, and Amanda will stop me and we will answer your questions right on the spot. And then after we finish with the presentation, I'll be glad to take any additional questions that you might have. Just let me say, to get us started, I have been helping people enhance their leadership and management effective skills for the last 20 years. And I am really, really excited to see what the millennials are doing in the workforce. I get to work with them on a day-to-day basis and actually see what they're doing for their organizations and what they're doing for their employers. And just to take it a step further, I will tell you that I have a granddaughter who's graduating from college next spring, and a grandson who's graduating from high school next spring. And I'm just delighted that as they both enter the workforce, they're going to be reporting to some of these wonderful high-potential millennial leaders. So that says a lot when Grandma says it's A-OK. Let's go ahead and get started and talk a little bit about the retention challenge that we have looking at us. I don't know if you're aware of this, but a baby boomer is retiring 1 every 4 seconds on a regular basis. We get that from a lot of research sources. And that is about to leave us with a drain on our leadership pipeline because there aren't enough Generation X's to start backfilling the drain that the baby boomers are now leaving in the workforce. So we have to take a serious look at the millennials. And we know that when we weren't looking, some of these millennials grew into leadership roles without the benefit of development, and others are looking to do the same. And actually, why not? After all, they're quite confident, they're very well educated, highly skilled, and they're competitively recruited. They're very uniquely driven. They know for a fact what they want for themselves, and they're self-motivated. They're eager to learn, and they can walk out the door tomorrow. Our clients, whether they're small, medium, or large, are telling us that their millennials are leaving after a short 24-month period. Well, that's very, very expensive for our client organizations. After all, it costs an average of $15,000 to $20,000 to bring on a new employee annually. So that's something we have to take notice of. So how did all this happen? Well, it goes to the fact that there was an economic collapse of 2000, and of course the horrible events of September 11, 2001 That's all embedded in our cultural DNA as a reminder that nothing is guaranteed. And when we combine these influences with the environment that the millennials were raised in, we know that they have a razor-sharp entrepreneurial attitude. So they want to take complete control of their own destiny. They were raised by optimistic, confident, driven parents. They're high performers who won't wait 10, 15, or 20 years to be pronounced as ready to lead, unlike the experience that the baby boomers had. They know their limitations, and they have a desire for development. So they want to be leaders, and they define leadership as empowering others to succeed. That is a unique mindset for folks coming into leadership roles. They're also very pragmatic, idealists. They're thinkers, and they're problem solvers, more than dreamers, actually. They think before they act instead of blindly accepting what's in front of them, and they carefully consider all their choices. So when you look at some of these natural leadership abilities, you can see why they're starting to call positive attention to themselves. They're pro-business and financially responsible. They have less household and credit card debt than any previous generation on record, with the exception that many of them do have high educational loan debt. They want to work with a sense of purpose, and they value what they do. One of the things about this sense of purpose is what's tripping them up with their current employer organizations. Many senior level baby boomers don't quite get this need to have a purpose connected with the work that they do. So many times I hear people at the executive level say, what do you mean, purpose? You're getting a paycheck, right? So we have a gap between these two different generations, and sometimes that's what's causing some of the millennials to leave after 2 years as well. So there's plenty of work there to do in regard to understanding. But there's so many advantages to having millennial leaders in the workplace. They are rapidly becoming a force in the consumer marketplace. So here's what millennial leaders are going to do for our organizations. They're going to position our companies to be competitive in the marketplace. They anticipate and innovate and design products and services for their peers. And if they're really passionate about your industry, they will likely be the most highly engaged employees in your workforce. I just want to point out to everyone that's listening in to the picture on the right-hand side. There's a story there that I want to share with you. And if at the end of our presentation you want to hear some more success stories about some of the millennial leaders that we're currently working with, I'd love to share those with you. But the particular group that you see on the right-hand side there is a company that started about 2 years ago, their first Montessori school in Manhattan, led by a 30-year-old gentleman that decided that he wanted to establish Montessori schools in Manhattan. That's a very, very competitive place for private schools. And he has now opened up his third one, he and his wife together. And he called on us to help him with identifying and articulating and writing those values that made his very first school so successful, because he wanted to make sure that they could identify and articulate those values with each successful school he planned on opening. And they have just done wonderful things and been very, very successful. But I wanted to point that out to you. Moving forward, let's talk a little bit about bridging the gaps. Now I'm going to talk particularly to those folks that are listening in that are in either HR roles or organizational development roles or responsible for developing millennial leaders. So here's some things you can do to help them become even better leaders. And that's to help them raise their visibility inside the organization. You want to assign them to some pretty powerful mentors at the highest level of the organization that can help bring them along. And ask some of your executives to sponsor them for some visible projects. Send them to some conferences to gain industry expertise and report the latest information when they get back. And you really need to help them raise their visibility externally and help them understand how important that is. Usually, millennial leaders are excited about participating and supporting nonprofit organizations and being a part of some type of community endeavor. But they also need to be assigned to client-facing projects as well. Have them work with your public relations team on some special events, or assign them to write or publish articles for LinkedIn, or maybe even some trade magazines. Train them in public speaking. Not all of them feel real confident with that particular area of competency. And they're aware of that and would welcome the opportunity to enhance their public speaking skills. So that's something you might want to consider. Now, there's some fundamental leadership and management skills that they all can benefit from. Even those folks with a 4-year college degree, or even those folks that may have some type of master's degree that they could use some assistance in. And that is, for instance, analyzing data, learning how to delegate, learning how to become very good at managing conflict, and how to conduct a performance review for those that have direct reports, and learning how to manage upward, and working in a matrix environment and how to collaborate across different lines of business. Making that transition, and this is a huge leap, making that transition from being an individual contributor to a manager. Most new managers and leaders don't get that type of development or support. And how to coach and develop others and help them identify their leadership strengths and weaknesses and how to leverage emotional intelligence. I'm going to stop right here and ask Amanda. Amanda, are you seeing anyone that would like to ask any questions at all before we move on?
We don't currently have any questions.
Okay, so I'm just going to keep moving along until somebody has a question they'd like to talk about. So there are some specific competencies that we recommend that high potential millennial leaders contemplate focusing on. And at the same time, we suggest those folks who are responsible for developing leaders take a close look at to better prepare these folks for their roles in the future. And we've broken them up into 5 unique categories. So starting on the left-hand side of the screen, we refer to these as flights. The first one is explore. That's all about understanding yourself. A really good leader is also a lifelong learner. So you really have to do some self-assessment work to understand where your strengths are, where some of your weaknesses are, so you can start to take ownership of your own development. From there, you have to build a good, solid foundation of your leadership and managerial competencies. Then we suggest you take a look at those competencies that are going to better help you manage those people that report to you, so you're constantly helping them improve their performance. The next set of competencies is around how to become a strong influencer, to work really well and collaborate with your peers across different specialty areas in your organization. And the final area of competency that we focus on is innovation. We're finding that's in great demand by many organizations across all different industries. And it's just not at that entry-level leadership position. It's across all areas of the organization. So as a newly appointed or promoted leader, if you can find some way to create a center of influence around innovation in your organization, it's really going to help your career trajectory. So let's take a deeper dive into some of these competencies and see what you can do to help your own career. In the Explore track, we're really talking about leading with emotional intelligence. There's a lot of good information out there and a lot of good books written on emotional intelligence, and a lot of them offer up some free assessments that you might want to consider so you can start to engage where your emotional intelligence level is. I'd also encourage folks to take a look and discern where your personal values are, because you may even be asked in an interview to outline what you believe your personal values are, what your personal purpose is, and what your career vision is for the next 5, 6, or 7 years. We also have a course that we offer to folks about creating a personal brand for external and internal marketing purposes, so people have a really good idea of what you are all about. And then we encourage folks to develop and manage their own individual leadership development plan. Then, as I was talking earlier about building a solid basics, and that's understanding good writing skills in the digital age. That's all about knowing who your audience is, whether you're building a report for upper level management, whether you're doing a presentation for a trade show, or just writing some good solid emails. And I'm sure that we have all been the recipient of those emails where you open them up and you read them. You know the sender really, really well, and you're pretty sure that sender has no idea how they're really coming across. So clarification, sending those emails, seems like a pretty straightforward thing, but we've all been the recipient of some that you had wished the reader had probably reconsidered before they hit the send button. Another area of building block basics is the ability to be able to analyze data and then put that data into some type of visual presence where you can bring the data alive when you do your presentation. Also, creating those engaging presentations and bringing all those writing skills, communication skills, and presentation skills together so that you can present a solid business case for upper-level management. Then when we talk about managing those direct reports, we're really talking about effectively delegating and following up to keep your team on track and making them a higher performing team, and coaching them as individuals, and also the challenges of transitioning from an individual contributor to a manager. I don't know if you've experienced this yet. It's really kind of, how I should say this, it can be interesting, I'll put it this way, to go to work one day and have a great relationship with the peer that sits next to you, and then a few weeks later go to work to find out that you've been promoted and that peer is now your direct report. So it might be that one week your peer is your best drinking buddy, okay, and the next week this person now reports to you, and that whole relationship dynamic totally changes. And there are some challenges around making that transition. Another thing to consider is, what does it really mean to be an effective manager? And this is something that can be gleaned by developing a relationship with a mentor. And we talk a lot about the advantages of developing a relationship with a mentor and being very particular about who you select for a mentor and understanding what the mentor's role is and what your role is as a mentee. So another competency is being a very skilled influencer and knowing how to do that in regard to what we call the language of appreciation. That's about engaging, rewarding, and recognizing not only the people on your team, but your peers as well. And leading through influence. This is about understanding yourself and others and situations. And we use an assessment called DISC that helps people get a better understanding of their personality styles, those they work with, how to leverage those. Once again, knowing what your strengths are and knowing what your weaknesses are. We also help our folks learn how to anticipate and manage changing priorities. Nothing happens any faster in a work environment than constant change. And some days when we leave our work environments, regardless of the industry, whether it's profit or nonprofit, you just feel like your head is on a swivel because things are happening so rapidly. A very skilled leader will learn how to do that and walk through all the ambiguity that causes. And then we talked about collaborating across the organization and what that means in terms of working in a matrix environment. And then leading with trust. You know, it's okay to make mistakes, and it's okay to say to people you work with and people that report to you, you know, I really messed up here, and here's what I'm going to do to correct this situation. That's what creates trust in the workplace. And finally, that last one I talked about earlier, the competency around innovation, and that is as a leader fostering innovation and teaching people how to be creative problem solvers. I'm sure each of you, like I have during the course of my career, have come across these people who always say, well, this is the way we've always done it. That's kind of an excuse for not embracing change, and it's usually an indication that people are not very comfortable with thinking outside of the box. But that mindset, as you can well guess, really stifles performance in an organization. And man, does it take the fun out of going to work in the morning. So those are some of the competencies that a potential leader needs to think about adopting. It's some of the competencies you want to have a conversation around the person that you report to and find out how you can become better at these competencies. And it certainly is true with those of us who are responsible for developing leaders. These are the type of elements that you want to put into a leadership development program. So here's some other information we all need to be aware of, and that is, what do millennials want at work? I found this pretty interesting when I ran across it. I'll share with you why it struck my fancy, so to speak. Millennials want, this is a unique a quote actually, treat us like our heads count and not like head count. They want to be connected to, and they say, ask us thoughtful and meaningful questions, encourage dialogue, make the process transparent, and let us own some of the solutions, and set up collaborative environments. We want to direction our organization with you and understand how our contributions fit in. We thrive on giving and receiving feedback, so give us an opportunity to weigh in on those important issues. And that annual cadence of performance reviews and employee engagement surveys is just way too slow. I mean, after all, we are digital natives and we're just using technology, so let's speed up the pace and explain why. Make it safe to ask and explore that question when something is presented to us. Make it safe for us to ask why. To do their best work, they really need to understand the thought processes behind the decisions. And you know, I have to say, the irony in this information that we have ran across in our research is what generation doesn't want those things in the workforce? I think we probably have, when I say we, I'm talking baby boomers and Generation X and the millennials. When it comes right down to it, we all probably have a lot more in common than we probably have thought to stop and consider. I'm responsible for doing employee engagement surveys and employee engagement projects for many of our clients. And the things that you see here on this slide that millennials want is something that we all want, but we don't always have the courage to say. And so I really have to applaud millennials for standing up and saying, hey, this is what's important to us. So, Amanda, do we have any questions yet?
We don't have any questions at this time.
Well, this is an easy crowd, or maybe they need another cup of coffee.
Oh, we just had one come in.
Okay, I'm ready.
So Martha asks, how do you reward them?
It's interesting because what we have learned about millennials, it's not so much all about the money like it has been with other generations. They like to have time off to support those events or those causes in the community that are most important to them. We have a large Fortune 500 client you may have heard of called Cardinal Health. They have a perk for their millennial leaders and all other members of the workforce as well, where they are allocated X number of days off per year to do community and nonprofit and volunteer work, or even mission work if they want to do mission work overseas. And this has come about from requests from millennials in their workforce. So there's all different ways to acknowledge and reward millennials, but giving them time off and recognize it, and just not, for the heck of it, but for a very meaningful purpose, is very, very important to millennials, far more than just giving them a bonus or whatever. So you have to understand what's really, really important to these folks and acknowledge them and recognize them for those things that are most important to them.
Okay. Do we have any other questions? Please send them in through your questions pane.
This is an easy crowd, Amanda.
Okay, I'm not receiving any further questions right now.
If any of you happen to think of anything afterwards, you're more than welcome to contact me at the phone number you see there on the screen or at the email address. We'd be glad to get back to you as soon as I possibly can.
Midge, we just had a few come in if you'd like to stay on and answer those.
Sure, I'd be glad to.
Great, thank you. So Connie wonders, what is the age span of the millennials?
Oh, right now it hasn't changed a whole lot. It's still from 18 to 35.
Okay, and then Martha asks, how do you have a critical conversation with them?
That's pretty interesting because we are finding the millennials that we are working with, they're far more open to have critical conversations than other generations have been in the past. As we mentioned earlier, they really like feedback. As a matter of fact, I heard from some baby boomer leaders the other day, some baby boomers think that millennials can be a bit annoying because they're all the time seeking feedback. And I think that they don't differ that much when it comes to crucial conversations, as long as they are treated with respect. And make sure when you have those conversations, you're asking as many questions as you are providing them with information. So many times when we go to have crucial conversations, especially around coaching millennials or anyone as far as that goes, in helping them with a performance issue or helping them with any type of challenge, we assume the role of counselor and advisor as opposed to assuming the role of a coach. And the role of a coach is to do as much asking and investigating so that we can get at the heart of whatever the issue is. And so many times we do way more telling than asking. And when we do that, we tend to stifle getting at the heart of the issue. And so many times we assume we know what the heart of the issue is, and we may get it wrong. So I always like to plan when I sit down to have a crucial conversation with a millennial is to have a list of questions I purposely plan to ask to make sure that I have a good understanding and that the person that I'm coaching has plenty of opportunity to share with me what is at the heart of the issue. And that usually works out pretty good for us.
Great, thank you. We had another question come in from Liz. Others have said that millennials are entitled. What are your thoughts about it?
I'm sorry, what's the question again?
Others have said that millennials are entitled. What are your thoughts?
You know, I understand that millennials can come across that way. What I like people to do is to stand back and realize what causes that perception that leads us to believe that they feel like they are entitled or come across as being entitled. And here's what I have learned from my interaction. Millennials have a vision of where they go, where they want to go, and what they're going to do when they get there. I heard a military recruiter at a presentation not too long ago say that when he talks to potential recruits nowadays, a potential recruit will say to him, here's what I want to do in this service now. Here's what I want to do in this service 2-3 years from now. And when I get out of the service at the end of my enlistment, here's what I'm going to do. Well, to some people, that may sound like somebody who believes they're entitled to do X, Y, Z, when in reality, this is a person who knows where they're going, what they're going to do when they get there, and how they're going to get there. So it's a different mindset, and we just are not used to hearing people who have that much clarity. And I think it's a matter of sitting down and asking some more questions and doing some more listening. Now, I'm not saying there aren't some millennials out there who are just a tad bit spoiled. I'm not saying those people aren't out there, but we have to be very careful not to A, stereotype all millennials, and B, paint them all with the same broad brush. I just did a presentation to some internal folks in my own company around a program that we're getting ready to launch the first of the year called the Accelerated Management Program for High Potential Millennial Leaders. And that's the first thing I heard out of one of my colleagues' mouth. I said, whoa, hold the phone. You're sitting here at this table and the person next to you is a millennial. Do you think so-and-so acts like an entitled person? Oh, no, I didn't mean her. I said, well, she's a millennial. And so we had to have a little chat about that. So we have to be very careful about not putting everybody in the same bucket, so to speak. But I totally get what you're saying. I have run across a few of those myself. Yeah, for sure.
Great. We have another question, and this is from Camelin. Being a millennial myself, I often run into the issue of baby boomers choosing not to view my input or opinions as valuable. I've made an effort.
Oh, yeah.
I've made an effort to especially be conscientious of my mannerisms, my speech, even my attire. However, it's still an issue I run into in the workplace. Any advice to avoid being viewed as an inexperienced youth, even though I am?
You know, I see it all the time, and it's real, and I admire your patience, and you're doing all the right things. And, you know, I just have to encourage you to keep on doing what you're doing. I would also encourage you to think that not all baby boomers are that way, and I would encourage you to seek out a baby boomer leader who is not that way and develop a relationship with that individual. And I'll tell you why. It's not uncommon when I am doing leadership development at a client site, I will hear those boomers make less than flattering remarks about millennials. And the first thought that goes through my head is, well, really? I think you're the one that needs the leadership development, not the millennial. And of course, I can't say that, but I do as gently as I can point out there's an opportunity here for both generations to meet mutually in the workplace, because it's a good leader's responsibility to leverage the talents of everybody in the organization, regardless of what generation they are. And so for somebody just to blindly dismiss somebody because they're stereotyping them as a sign of a weak leader, not a strong leader. So I just have to encourage you to be patient and pick out that really broad-minded, wonderful baby boomer who is exceptional, and develop a strategic alliance with that individual, because that individual is going to shine a light on you and your talents and everything you have to bring to the table, and you both will be better off for it, and so will your organization.
Okay, we have one last question. Do you think that millennials treat others with the same respect that they expect to be treated?
Wow. You know, I cannot say personally as a baby boomer that I've been treated with disrespect in the workplace. Now, I will tell you the only time I've been treated by disrespect that really jumps out in my mind is 20 years ago. Maybe it's been, about 20. We'll say, for the sake of this conversation, 20-some years ago, I did my undergraduate work at Ohio University as a non-traditional student, which meant that, I was probably my late 30s doing college work with a bunch of 18 and 19-year-olds. And I did have one of my classmates say to me one day, "What are you doing here this morning?" And I said, "Yeah, I know. Don't you hate these 8 o'clock classes?" And he says, "No, what are you doing here? You're old enough to be my mom." And I said, "Well, I'd love to meet your mom." And what I was thinking was, your mother needs to have a chat with you because you're rude. But I explained to him how important it was for me to get a college degree and go on to get my master's, because I'd stayed home to be a stay-at-home mom and raise my daughter. So we'd have a little chat about that. But Um, that's probably the only time I've ever been treated really, really rude. I guess I'm very fortunate, but I've never been treated rude by a millennial in the workplace. I guess I'm just blessed. Um, so I really, really can't answer that question, but I usually go into an organization in a leadership role or I'm doing coaching. I'm using a place where I can assist millennials. And the millennials I work with, oh my word. The people that are on my team, that are my peers, they're absolutely fantastic. They just blow my mind. I totally enjoy working with them. So I think I'm really blessed.
Okay, those are all the questions that we have.
Well, let me say this has been an absolute delight, and I appreciate all your questions and would love to hear from any of you at any time, and I hope you have a great rest of your evening.
Thank you to our presenter, Midge, for leading the session, and thank you for your participation tonight. If you have any further questions or comments about tonight's topic, you may email Midge directly, and her information is there on your screen. As we close the webinar, a survey will open on your screen. You'll be prompted to respond to a few evaluation questions. Please take a moment to share your thoughts on tonight's webinar. If you have any additional questions or comments whatsoever, please send an email to education@kkg.org. Thank you, everyone, and have a good night.